I wanted to get a Scooby-Doo costume for this video, but I had the budget of not that much money, so I went to Spirit Halloween and I bought this mask, the mask from Scary Movie, which, it kind of fits. That movie is a parody of movies like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, which starred Matthew Lillard and Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr., who are in the Scooby-Doo movie, so it fits, whatever, shut up. I really hope people can hear me do this mask, though. No. Yeah, the live-action Scooby-Doo movies from the 2000s, directed by Raja Gosnell and written by James Gunn, or have the story, screenplays by James Gunn. James Gunn was involved, is what I'm saying. And I really loved these movies a lot as a kid. I watched them basically every Halloween when they would air on ABC Family. Then as a teenager, I kind of went through a little bit of a phase of oh man, these movies I like as a kid, I kind of pretended not to like them because if they had bad reviews, that must mean they're bad, yeah. But then as I got older, I realized I could just like whatever I want. I shouldn't care what critics say. And I really like these movies. Not just that, I honestly see them as really great pieces of Scooby-Doo media that have a really good understanding of what makes Scooby-Doo great, and have honestly pretty interesting stories for these characters. And I love Scooby-Doo the franchise. I watched the cartoons as a kid. I watched a ton of the animated movies, anytime they would air on Boomerang and stuff. And these movies as well. I loved these movies a lot, and I still really like them. And I'm really excited to talk about them. I wanted to talk about Scooby-Doo for a while now, and this is that. So here we go. We're going to talk about the 2000 Scooby-Doo movies and how fun they are. I'm not gonna say these movies have Shakespeare-level stories, even though I do think so. I'm just not gonna say it. I do feel like they work really well within the context of the Scooby-Doo franchise. If you look at the Scooby-Doo franchise as a whole and you see these stories, you go okay, these are actually pretty interesting stories to take with these characters. For example, the first movie is about Mystery Inc. splitting up and having to reconcile their differences and reunite while solving a mystery on an island that forces them to work together. So they can see what they did wrong before in the past, but they also see that they work better as a unit. And so, they have to reunite, like I said, which honestly, yeah, good story. And then the second one, it follows them facing various monsters from mysteries they saw before, like the Black Knight ghost, the 49er ghost, right, all that stuff, and which are from the actual show, the original show, which is pretty neat. And they have to figure out, hey, how are they real and who is behind this? And at the same time, Shaggy and Scooby look at their goofiness and see how they weren't always the most helpful, and they try to change that, but they realize they are great the way they are. They are the heart of Mystery Inc. And they don't need to change, which is pretty neat, honestly. These are genuinely really good stories when you look at how they utilize the characters. They are they're goofy, they have goofy moments in here, and they have the typical things you would see in a Scooby-Doo story, but at the same time they don't feel like they're mocking it or parodying it in any sense. They're doing stories that actually feel okay, yeah, this is interesting. When you look at the characters, they kind of reevaluate just what makes Scooby-Doo the characters work, and realize that hey, they're great just the way they are. They don't need to change, which is pretty neat, honestly. I quite like it. Pretty much has a tongue-in-cheek vibe to it, where it's not making fun of it, but it's still kind of going along with the silliness of it all. But at the same time, doing interesting stuff with them. It reminds me a lot of since, like I said before, these movies are written by James Gunn. You could definitely see that influence in here that you would see in things like Guardians of the Galaxy or the Suicide Squad, where they're comic book movies that do engage in the silliness of the comic book medium. But at the same time, they also try to explore the emotional depths of the characters and do interesting things with them, right? Try to utilize them interestingly in the story. And while I'm not saying these movies are as good as those, you could definitely see a little bit of that influence in there that James Gunn would later put into other movies, which is pretty cool. I like it. And yeah, it has a love for Scooby-Doo. And I also really love that the setting for the second one is Coolsville, as in from a pup named Scooby-Doo, this town where they lived in, which is pretty great. Even though I'm pretty sure Fred said Coolsville sucks.
I think Coolsville sucks.
See right there? He said it. Why would you say that, Fred?
There are some things that don't entirely work, in my opinion. For example, Fred and Daphne's romance in this movie. This is the first time Fred and Daphne ever had any romantic feelings for each other. As far as I know, I don't think there was really much of that in any of the Scooby-Doo shows prior, unless it was more a hint or something. But here they are actually a full-on couple, or at least they do get together in the first one and are a couple in the second one. But it's kind of not really shown that much, so by the time they have some scenes every now, sometimes, very rarely, where they go hey, you know, I kind of like you, like that kind of thing. I just kind of go like, oh yeah, that's right, they're a couple. But hey, it did mean that since this was like the first Scooby-Doo media that showed them as a couple, later incarnations that would have them romantically involved did do it a little bit better, you know, right? Which is good, you know, it's neat. Also, apparently, like a few months after this movie, like Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr., the actors for Daphne and Fred, actually did get married. So, you know, I guess the chemistry was there.
There is another aspect of the stories that I am not the biggest fan of, but I'll get into that a bit later in this video. But yeah, just be prepared for that. I would say that when it comes to which movie has the better story, I think the one in the first one is a little more engaging to me, but I do actually quite like the stuff with Scooby and Shaggy in the second one, where they kind of explore like, hey, you know, what they kind of don't entirely love about themselves and try to change, but then realize, hey, they're great the way they are. I just kind of wish it was more like emphasized on, but like it's emphasized pretty well in the second one, so, you know, I really like that. But enough talk about like you know, the story. You know, like who cares about story? Am I right? Let's talk about another thing about this movie that I really like. The cast for this movie is honestly perfect. Like no flaws, if I'm being honest. Like you got, I have them written down right here. You got Freddie Prinze Jr. as Fred. You got Sarah Michelle Gellar as Daphne. You got Linda Cardellini as Velma. You got Neil Fanning as Scooby-Doo. Neil Fanning, that's what I meant to say. And the GOAT, Matthew Lillard as Shaggy. He is so great in this role that he like later on he would become the official voice for Shaggy in a lot of the cartoons and movies that we see nowadays. I think starting in like 2010 or like 2012, something like that. Man, but yeah, he's just amazing. But everyone in this cast is fantastic.
These are legitimately good casting choices that give like a fun and mostly faithful energy to the characters. They don't feel like other like, oh, celebrity casting choices in movies where they go like, oh, okay, yeah, they like, you know, Chris Pratt is Garfield, I guess. I don't know. No, these genuinely feel like they're trying to like be the characters. And whenever I see these performances or hear their voices, I go like, okay, I can see that being Velma. I see that being Shaggy. I see that being Fred and Daphne. And yeah, I think they are legitimately really good. I think the only biggest differences between like how they're characterized are like Fred and Daphne, where I can still see the Fred and Daphne energy in there because like some of the things that are put in here would be later put on in like future Scooby-Doo media that I saw. But like here we got like Fred, who was played by Freddie Prinze Jr. Fred is kind of goofy and dumb and a little full of himself, real himbo vibes. And Daphne is made to be more cool and have a kick butt attitude, but she still got her usual Daphne kind of like girly, feminine trait. I don't know how to say this without sounding sexist, but like, you know, she still's got like those things where she's like, oh yeah, she cares, you know, about her looks. It's not the only thing she cares about, but like, you know, she likes to present herself nicely. You know, again, I do not know how to say this without sounding sexist. And even Neil Fanning is honestly a pretty good Scooby. Like, no Frank Welker or Scott Nines, but you know, he's still really good. And he does a good job, you know, doing the Scooby voice. We're replacing some letters with R's, like, oh, Raggy. Nothing like that, but you know, you get what I mean.
Oh, and you got like other cast members in these movies, like Alicia Silverstone from Clueless is in the second one as a news reporter, and the bad guy as well. I'll get into that later. There's Mr. Bean. He's in the first one. He's also something that like I'll have to get into a bit later. And Seth Green is in the second one. You know, I mentioned this because he plays like Velma's love interest in the second one, but also he is the co-creator of Robot Chicken. And I remember there's a Robot Chicken sketch that involves Scooby-Doo, which actually has the cast from these movies as the Scooby-Doo characters in that. So I don't know. I think I heard somewhere that he got them because of his work on this. I don't know. That might be true. I hope it is. But like, yeah, I just think that's interesting to mention. But yeah, point is, the cast in this movie are great. They're just iconic. Very iconic. And I love the way they dress them as well. Like, this is more of like a production design thing, which I'll probably get into a bit later. But I like all their outfits. They all got good fits. And you look at them, they feel like, oh yeah, those are the classic, like, you know, Scooby, like, gang fits. But they're also updated enough to have that sort of 2000s energy as well. But it also looks good. Like, they look fantastic. Good, like I said, good fits.
In this section, I'm going to talk about things like the movie's aesthetic, comedy, and general vibes, and how it's kind of a product of its time, but I kind of love that.
I mentioned earlier that this movie had like a sort of tongue-in-cheek vibe to it, where it feel like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, like it's like kind of poking fun a little bit at like the Scooby-Doo, but not entirely making fun of it or like saying it's dumb or anything. And like just like the fact that this movie feels dated, it kind of adds to that. Like the original Scooby show, like you know, Where Are You, and the new Scooby-Doo movies always kind of felt like, again, like a product of its time, that being the 70s, where they had like, you know, the music that would play around that time, you know, the clothing is very 70s, the guest stars like, oh, Sonny and Cher, oh wow, who, I don't know if any kids nowadays would know who those are. But like, you know, again, it felt very of its time, and so that show, those shows feeling very 70s, you know, and this movie feeling like very 2000s, just kind of feels like, you know, like, oh, it's just kind of going along with that, like with that aspect of Scooby-Doo, that it can be, you know, sort of dated. And you see that here with like the music that's played. You got music like Simple Plan, Simple Plan song, I Don't Want to Grow Up, which is a bop, I love it. And of course, you got the clothing that you see the characters wear. Also posts a bit fun at like 2000s like teen culture, you know, right, with the kid who talk like, oh, hey buddy, what's crack-a-lackin', you know, type of thing. I genuinely love that. I think that's fun. And yeah, I don't know if that was like an intentional thing, like, oh yeah, they're kind of like making it purposely a little bit dated, or if they were just like genuinely thinking that was like all like really cool to have in the movie. I don't know, but it works for me. I like it. I think the comedy in these movies are mostly pretty good. Like, there's some of like the visual gags with like the CGI characters don't always land for me because like it looks a little bit like not good, which I'll talk about a bit later. But like a good amount of jokes get some laughs from me. You know, I like some of the line deliveries from the characters. Like I said, the cast deliver their lines well. The first movie has quite a bit of adult humor in it, and like I honestly think that's fantastic because like is this from the era of Hanna-Barbera where they were trying to like make more adult versions of their kids stuff. You know, right? Like you have like Adult Swim was popular at the time, so things like Harvey Birdman and Space Ghost, Coast to Coast were coming out, and like Rosie and the Pussycats with a PG-13 rating came out a few like maybe a year or so prior, I'm not sure, but it was like around that time where they wanted to go like, oh yeah, let's like find ways to make these like a little bit more adult. And originally this movie was supposed to have a higher rating than PG, but I'll get into that a bit later. But yeah, some of those adult jokes are still in that first movie, and like I think they're funny. The second one doesn't have as many. It definitely feels like the second one they were trying to lean in more towards like a kid-friendly vibe. It very much gives me like Secret of the Ooze vibes, where if you know the 1990 Ninja Turtles movie that has like quite a few adult moments, but then the second one they like made it more a little more like goofy and cartoony. Yeah, this kind of reminds me of that, but you know, I still like it. I like Secret of the Ooze, and I like Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed. But yeah, and also the movie just kind of has that like 2000s like kids movie vibes, you know, right? Like the, oh yeah, we're taking this classic cartoon, making it live action, the animals will be CGI type of thing. But the compared to other ones from that time, I actually like these movies, so you know, yeah. But like yeah, I think overall the movie, like the aesthetics, vibes, comedy, it is kind of all dated, but like I still enjoy it. I like it. I'm having a good time. Look at my face. See? Got my tongue out and I'm smiling.
By the way, if like some parts of the dialogue throughout the video sound a bit better than the rest, it's because in some parts like I took off my mask because I know I'm gonna like put visuals over a segment, and I'm like, okay, I'll just like have like my normal voice for that. But other times I just forgot to take off my mask. But yes, keep that in mind.
One thing about these movies that is dated, but like probably not in like a great way, is the CGI. Like, don't get me wrong, I think like from a design point, some of the CGI characters look pretty good. Like, I think like some of the monsters in the second movie look fun, and I actually really like the way Scooby-Doo looks in these movies. Like from a design point, I mean. Like, if you look at him, it's like different from the cartoon design, but not so different where it just feels like unrecognizable. You can still see the Scooby in there. You can still see he's got that dog in him, and I quite like it. You know, right? Things could have been worse. They could have like done like a 2014 Ninja Turtles or the original Sonic movie design and just make some abomination that does not look like anything I grew up with. But they changed it up a little bit, but didn't change it so much that it's unrecognizable. It is still a Scooby I can recognize, a Scooby I want in my household, and I think that's pretty great. Like the animations on him, I think are pretty good. Like he can have like some good moments of movement and be pretty expressive. Same goes for like some of the monsters in like the first and second movie. The thing is, like when you just look at them, especially when they interact with things, whether it be the other CGI monsters or like you know, like the people or anything. They just look fake. It just like looks wonky. It just looks off to me. And it kind of fits the vibe for the second one, where like in that one, someone is bringing the monsters to life by, you know, basically using the costumes from the people they had unmasked before and just bringing those to life. So whenever the CGI monsters look fake in that one, you could make the argument like, oh no, it fits because like the costumes look fake, so you know, the monsters would look fake too. Same goes for like the monsters that aren't CGI and are just gonna be guys in costumes, so like they say are just actual monsters. So it's like you can make that argument. I'm making that argument right now, so it doesn't bother me too much. But like it is something that I notice where I go like, oh yeah, man, these movies are fun, but the CGI is not really good. Good Scooby-Doo mystery ends with like the mystery gang figuring, you know, capturing the monster and then unmasking them. And then we get an explanation of like, hey, who this is, you know, what was their motives and how they did it, all that stuff. And of course, the person, usually an old man, says, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids. And you're a stupid dog too, or you mangy dog, or just your dog, you know, all that stuff. It's, you know, it's something that every Scooby-Doo story needs. And these movies definitely have that. However, I kind of don't like the answers of like who was behind all them. At least not entirely.
The first movie, it says like, oh yeah, spoilers. I mean, there's been spoilers throughout the video, but like, the first movie has Scrappy as the bad guy. For all of you who don't know, Scrappy was like Scooby's nephew in like the original show, the original Scooby-Doo shows, and apparently he was really hated, and so that was kind of the joke throughout this in this movie, that like, oh yeah, Scrappy's the bad guy, isn't that funny? And the thing that I don't like about this is that he really only appeared in one scene that was like a gag about like how he like sucks, and then like none of the clues actually really lead to the fact that it could be him. Like, I don't know, like they don't really align all that much. It'd be like, oh yeah, this one character that only appeared once, sure, yeah, it's like all the clues I guess led to him, whatever. And the joke isn't really that funny to me because as a kid I didn't really know who Scrappy was. So because of that I didn't really see the hate for him, you know, right? Even now I understand the hate for him, like what was that all about? But like I didn't really see much Scooby-Doo media that had Scrappy in it, so I still see this and I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess, yeah, this is for people who don't like Scrappy. The second movie has Alicia Silverstone from Clueless, who is actually Jonathan Jacobo. So the news reporter is actually like an old guy that escaped from prison that was one of like the old pterodactyl ghosts, and so he was like doing this to like get back at Mystery Inc. and whatnot. And you know, the clues do feel like closer to like oh yeah, it makes sense why it's him, so it doesn't really feel like just like an out of like a random choice. But at the same time, he is a character that only appears in one scene for a gag, and then it's just revealed that it's him. It's like, I don't know, it doesn't really feel that satisfying to me.
Definitely don't hate these reveals, but I'm like, oh yeah, they're just like not as satisfying in a sense where we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that I feel like this was a good answer to this mystery that's been throughout the movie. I just don't really feel like that. But like, you know, in a sense, the Scrappy one is like a little bit funny when you know like the context of his character. The Jacobo one at least makes a little more sense, and it kind of fits, but like it also just feels a little bit like oh yeah, you remember him? I'm like, no, oh yeah, that's right, I guess it's him, whatever, I don't know. I just kind of want to move on. I'm tired of wearing this mask. I wanted to do more research for these movies, and so I really wanted to listen to the commentaries that are on the DVD/Blu-rays, but I was not able to get them in time. Yeah, which is a real shame. Maybe one day they'll release like a 4K version of these movies, or a Criterion release. Criterion, I'll get on them. Make the Criterion releases of the Scooby-Doo movies. But I was able to use my good old friend Wikipedia to look up some of the behind the scenes for this movie. And one of the things is that apparently James Gunn confirmed that there is an R-rated cut of the movie somewhere. Yeah, so I knew for a long time that this was supposed to be like more like this was supposed to be rated higher than a PG. I always thought like it was gonna be like a PG-13 movie along the lines of like the Josie and the Pussycats movies. Not Josie and the Pussycats movie. There was only one. But like apparently, this was going to be like R-rated, or like at one point there was a cut that was R-rated, and it would have included more like stoner jokes for Shaggy and Scooby, you know, some marijuana references, so we could have gotten like stoner Shaggy, you know, too bad we didn't get that. And another thing is that there was supposed to be an on-screen kiss with Velma and Daphne, but they cut that. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm just like, Why would they take away such a beautiful thing? I kind of hope we see this R-rated cut, like legit. Like, I mean, like I'm always a little bit hesitant when like something like that is mainly a kids franchise gets like an adult version. But like, which I guess we technically do have with Scooby-Doo with things like Velma. I'm not gonna get into that. But like this, I genuinely kind of want to see it. You know, right? Like, like why are we asking for things like the Snyder cut or stuff like that? Let's ask for the R-rated Scooby-Doo cut. I want to see that. James Gunn, please, like at least show it to me. I won't show it to anyone. I promise. Like, please, I just want to see it. But like, yeah, I want to know what an R-rated version of this first movie could have been like. Another thing is that at one point there were plans for a third movie. And not just that, but apparently it was supposed to be like directed and written by James Gunn. So he would have actually directed it, which honestly would have been fantastic. I would have loved to see what he would do in a Scooby-Doo movie, like if he was directing it. And the story, I have it written down here. According to Gunn, he tweeted this. He said, "The Mystery Inc. gang are hired by a town in Scotland who complain they are being plagued by monsters, but we discover throughout the film the monsters are actually the victims. Scooby and Shaggy have to come to terms with their own prejudices and narrow beliefs." Which again kind of goes along with like what I like about these movies is that like they have like, oh yeah, these are good Scooby-Doo stories that have the things you would expect from a Scooby-Doo story, but at the same time also have things that kind of are showing as sort of like introspective on the Scooby gang, and this just kind of goes along with that. And I think, yeah, this would have been interesting to see. But apparently it was canceled because the second movie didn't make as much money as they wanted. You know, Warner Brothers, they gotta be greedy bastards. And speaking of greedy bastards, you know who else is a greedy bastard? Me, that's right, I want some money, and you can give me some money to help me get things like food, or, you know, other things I might need, like clothing, and you can help me by giving me money on my Patreon. That's right, I got a Patreon now, you should check it out. You know, I got different tiers, I'm gonna be releasing exclusive content onto there. You'll get some rewards, you know, for whichever tier you get, and yeah, just like, any support would be helpful, honestly, like, and all jokes aside, you know, I genuinely want to make this, like, a YouTube thing, like, a career. You know, this could be a nice step to help me towards that goal. And yeah, maybe even get some better equipment for like to make the videos better. But yeah, go ahead if you can go to my Patreon and see if that's something you'd be interested in doing. You know, subscribing to it, following that. Please, I really want dinero. Like, yeah, it's a real shame. It would have been great to have a live-action Scooby-Doo trilogy of movies, but I'm glad we got these two movies. There's also the live-action Cartoon Network ones that I remember watching at one point. Don't remember what happens in them. But yeah, yes, Scooby-Doo 3 would have been epic to see, but I'm glad we got these two movies. Now here we are in the end, and yeah, the Scooby-Doo movies, Scooby-Doo 2002 and Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, are really fun movies. Are they dated? Yes. But that kind of adds to the charm. I think they're super fun. And not just that, I think they're great pieces of Scooby-Doo media that show off just what makes these characters great. Something that I love about the Scooby-Doo franchise is something that I've realized throughout the years is that like, they have, the Scooby-Doo movies and shows have very key aspects that do not change. It is, you know, it is pretty formulaic. They got a specific formula that they go with, and they use it throughout most of the Scooby-Doo media that we see. But at the same time, it is also willing to experiment. It is able to try new aesthetics and like, you know, try to like present these like the specific formula in different ways. Like some of them will just be like a, oh yeah, a normal like a kind of 70s show where they're just like solving a few mysteries. Others could be like trying to lean more into the horror aspect and make the monsters actually real. Others are more cartoony and like try to go for something more comedic, like a pup named Scooby-Doo. And then you got stuff like this that actually kind of like, you know, is very like 2000 centric, but also like looks deeper into like the characters and go like, oh hey, what if we like did this, you know, or explore some interesting ideas. And we kind of see this like sort of like thinking utilized in other Scooby-Doo media, like I think like Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which is great. And I'm not saying this exactly started this like new wave of like trying different things with Scooby-Doo. Like there were definitely things I experimented prior before, like the pup named Scooby-Doo, which was different from Where Are You Scooby-Doo, and the direct-to-DVD movies like Zombie Island, which I think is fantastic. Probably the best Scooby-Doo movie out there. But these movies are so fantastic. I think they're a lot of fun, and they just showed off like, you know, right, the good talent that was here, from the cast to like, you know, like the production design people. Like the production design, I forgot to mention that. I think he's really good in the first one. Like it's really great. And James Gunn, like I said, I think like you could see his talents here, something that you will later see, like elements of like his like work in like future things, like the Guardians of the Galaxy films and the Suicide Squad. And I could just go on because I genuinely really like these movies. Screw teenager me for pretending not to like these. Just be true to yourself. Just say you like these movies, because I sure do. And yeah, the Scooby-Doo 2000s movies, fantastic. I really like them. They're super fun. And yeah, I hope you had a good Halloween. I sure had an okay one. I talked about Scooby-Doo, but I also had to wear this stupid mask. Next Halloween video, I'm doing, my costume won't require a mask. I hate this. God, I hate this mask. Oh my god, I am so sorry.
Forget it. It's fine. Believe me, I've been hit with much harder things. Try taking a stake to the heart. A metaphorical stake, but still, it hurts nonetheless.
Why were you just standing there?
Yes, of course, I suppose I should explain why I'm here. I came here to show you my Scooby-Doo passion project.
Scooby-Doo project? Is it like a fan fiction or something like that?
Yes, it is. It's called Scoob Walker. It's a crossover between Scooby-Doo and Star Wars. It's a project I'm very passionate about. Starting off as a joke is just picturing the Scooby Gang unmasking Darth Vader and moving on to a full-scale storyline, lying beneath one vision. My vision. Granted, I'm only 2 films in, but still, I think it's like a good start. This is... I don't regret, but...
What is it with people coming up to me with their fan fictions recently?
I just love Scooby-Doo crossovers. Well, just crossovers in general. Just so much possibilities in each one, if done right. They can be something special. And if fanfic is used right, so can it. I just love it.
That's interesting. A live action property and an animated property crossing over.